this is its third iteration of it, and I know there's a certain point in Act Two where you start to hear audience cry, and it's collective, and it genuinely is, one of my proudest moments, but also one of the saddest moments that it gets people that much. There is a lot of tears in it, and the company themselves are so fantastic with how they approach it and their honesty with it. It is, as you said, the film it's a sort of harsh reminder of like where we are in the world currently, and unfortunately, it seems to be getting worse. But since it's been on this run as well, I feel that the audiences are really, really engaging with it in a way that we as a company didn't think they would do this time. 3 years on, last time we did it, it was the end of one government, and I think the feeling in the country was quite strong, and the feeling towards that government were quite strong. So I think that all culminates around the sort of the second half of the second half into both tears and anger for audiences that come and see it.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? To think this was first on film in 2016, which is like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like anything's changed. In fact, it's gone worse. I remember it was a little bit of an introduction, I think, of most of us to food banks.
Yeah.
These happen.
Yeah.
And now it's everyday part of our life and vocabulary, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it is. Actually, weirdly, Ken Loach wrote an article in The Guardian about 2 days ago about that, about how we as a country now just accept the idea of a food bank as part of everyday life. And you're right, in 2016, I think most people were going, a food bank, what's that? But food banks, I think, had been running maybe 2, 3, 4 years before that, but much more in the background, I think, as stick and plasters. When we were making it in 2023, I spent some time in a food bank called Newcastle Food Bank, which was at that point called the West End Food Bank. And I thought that I had some understanding of what was going on in my city. I live a quarter of a mile away from one of the food banks, and I thought I knew. Sometimes I open the Guardian app, do a bit of reading. I had no idea. So that food bank in a city of this size, Newcastle, operates now something like 24 sessions a week across all areas of Newcastle. Now that's Newcastle, it's not Manchester. So goodness knows what's happening in Manchester and how that provision is sort of found for people who are needing to access it. It's shocking that like our system and a country in our position have accepted that it's just part of what we do now.
And I think that was why it made such an impact with what Dave Johns did with the writing of it, and taking it onto stage. I think theatre is very, very good at giving messages through the performances, because we can have conversations afterwards about what we've seen on stage. And I know you've seen kind of audiences crying and heard that, but are you feeling that the audiences have been responding in that way, especially on this tour?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to watch audiences now. As I said earlier, on our first day of rehearsals, we had a big conversation about what we felt might happen with this run of it. We didn't know if audiences would. So in the last run of it, pretty much everywhere we went, Manchester, Birmingham, even to places like true blue places like Cambridge and Guildford, we had standing ovations, and I think part of the company's fear was would its message get across in the same way 3 years on? And from what we've witnessed in Newcastle and in Glasgow last week, from what the cast have said in Glasgow last week, it was an extraordinary response to what audiences were witnessing on stage. The performances are absolutely excellent. Ken Loach had said to Dave Johns, as you rightly said, adapted this stage version of it. Ken Loach had said to Dave, just be honest, just be honest. Now, honesty is sometimes the hardest thing to do on stage, but that cast absolutely do it. And I think as an audience, you really feel it. Now, also at the same time, it's not all sad. It's not 2 hours of sadness, because I think, you wouldn't be sad if it was 2 hours of sadness. So there's a lot of humour in there. Somebody from the food bank, Carol Rowland, who's their logistics manager, said to me, it's not all about the sadness. There's a lot of people that get through this with a sense of humour, and I think you hear that in Dave's adaptation of it. And at the same time, we use some sound bites from the House of Commons, and it starts in 2010 with David Cameron and goes through up to now 2026 with Keir Starmer, and it tells that story as well over the top of the show.
Well, I've seen some of the production shots, and you've got like projection screens behind, haven't you? And again, does that help with that storytelling?
Yeah, there was during COVID, I started to engage with a thing on Facebook. There was a very, very clever marketing company called Led by Donkeys, and I don't know if you've seen any of their stuff. What they tend to do is they tend to put up. At that point, they were putting up tweets or X's, I don't know what they're called now, of what a politician had said maybe 4 years ago, and then alongside it on another billboard, what the politician was saying now. And they weren't passing judgment. They were saying, this is what was said, and this is now what is said. And the difference can sometimes be quite stark. And I think because we live in a society that's just full of, like, we feast quite rapidly on just quick bites of information, and then we're on the next thing. And I think what they've done quite cleverly is gone, okay, well, we'll use what you've said, so we hear where you are now and what your perspective is. And so Rhys Jarman, who designed the show with me, we essentially utilised that idea from Led by Donkeys, because they project stuff on Houses of Parliament, on the White Cliffs of Dover. They've done all sorts of stuff. And it's really clever political marketing that is not rammed down your throat. It's just what was said with some images.
And I think that is a really great device to use for this play. I really, really do. I can't wait for it to come to Manchester. I think Manchester audiences, we are going to resonate. We are going to love it. And I know yourself, it's so good to have a working class like theatre director, because again, I think that just brings truth and passion to it. And do you feel that?
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's so I trained in Manchester. I trained at Manchester School of Television and Theatre, which at that point was in Didsbury. And so I spent like 5 years of my life in Manchester. I love Manchester. It's my second home. So coming back to it with the show, but also I think you're right about working class theatre directors. There's a lot of conversation, I think, irregularly about where working class people are within the arts, and it's a tricky combination of, I think, a number of things about having opportunity and chance, and maybe if you're from a working class background, you don't get as many opportunities or the potential to be in the same rooms as people that can open doors for you. And I think part of my strong belief is that, like, our voice, working class culture, needs to find its own stories and see stories on stage that are not, all about our glorious working past. I think it's also about, what our future holds and what our now is. So yeah, it's really brilliant to be able to find stories that are set. Well, they are working class stories, but they're set now. They're not in the 60s or the 50s, or they're set on some boats or in a coal yard or a shipyard. They're from now. And I think like the story itself is so cleverly drawn by Ken Loach, Paul Laverty and Rebecca O'Brien from 16 Films that when Dave's adapted it, I think it's become such we have paid sort of homage to them in what they did, because I think they made 3 films up here. I, Daniel Blake, Sorry I Missed You, and The Old Oak. in Newcastle. And I think what they've managed to do for Newcastle and also for Working Class Voices is quite extraordinary.
And honestly, I couldn't say any more, because I'm from a working class background myself, and I know exactly, how hard it can be within the arts, and I love it. I love what is being done here. I love people like Stephen Graham.
Yeah,
Graham,
totally.
what Stephen Graham has done to kind of help drive that forward.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Where are you going to go, though? In Manchester first, where are you going to visit? Are you going to go back to Didsbury, Mark?
I don't know, because it's all changed so much. It doesn't look like the same city. I was there towards the end of the 90s, which tells you how old I am. And so when I go back to it, it's such a different place. It's so, when you sort of go up Oxford Street and you go into Piccadilly Gardens, and it's all so swishy and fancy now that, so when I was there, it was, it was still a great city, but it's had so much regeneration. Also, this is going to sort of make some people not like me. I'm also a Man United fan. So when I was there, we were doing all right. And we're not doing that. Well, we're not that great at the moment. We haven't been for years. So it was a brilliant thing. So, when we go, I always go to Salford's, Media City, and look across the water to see the ground. And then normally sort of go down to Wanderpast, where the student union I used to go to was, all those great memories. That city made me in a way. That city really changed my perspective of who I was, because I'd come out of a very small village near a place called Durham, and then went to Manchester, and I was like, wow, this is a city. It's a city, and it provided me with so much friendship and opportunity and different things that I think it really helped shape who I became.